Hi, and welcome to BOMA International's latest Deeper Dive video presentation. I'm John Celestri, and the topic today is cybersecurity. This, of course, is a companion piece to our latest Deep Dive online feature, which you can access at boma.org/deep dive. Our panelists today were instrumental in the creation of the Deep Dive, and they are Wanda Lenkowich, President of Chinook Systems, Jason Lund, Managing Director and Leader of Technology Infrastructure for JLL, and Tommy Russo, Senior Vice President of Technology and Engineering Services for Ackridge. Folks, thank you all for being here today. Jason, let's start with you. How big is the issue, both for U.S. business generally and specifically commercial real estate? What are we looking at in terms of the risk of cybersecurity?
Well, that's a great question. It's in two parts, actually. It is a multi-trillion-dollar risk. That's the estimate in coming years. And business or enterprise has been dealing with it for years. And that is what in real estate world, we call that IT, information technology. So hacking and the awareness of all of that has been an issue for over a decade. And the ways to deal with it have actually been developing as it's been going along. What's been challenging is the cyber technology or the cyber hacking in real estate. More and more, as we automate our buildings and put more and more systems in our buildings, those systems are vulnerable to hacking, just like any system that would go into an enterprise. So what we're finding is that building owners, much less aware of the vulnerabilities of cyber, are having more and more events, and it's causing issues within buildings.
Why is insurance coverage becoming harder to get, folks?
The requirements for insurance are becoming harder to get. So I don't think the insurance is necessarily becoming harder to get. I think what they need you to do in order to get the insurance is harder to get. So for example, multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication and document retention policies have to be spelled out and 100% crystal clear. Otherwise, you don't get it.
We've kind of likened it as driving drunk, right? So you can get car insurance and you're insured until you drive drunk. And that's really the analogy we've been looking at with respect to our cyber policy. And what we've found over the years with our policy internally is that they're looking for a continuous level of improvement also on your the hardening of your infrastructure. And so that's one of the reasons why it's getting harder and harder, because as we're dealing with things like multi-factor authentication, which is more or less the low-hanging fruit, then you're getting into data loss and prevention and penetration testing and et cetera. And they just keep upping the bar on the requirements associated with insurance.
Those are great answers. And I'd add this from the real estate side again. Insurance companies have not yet quite figured out what the liabilities are, what the hazards are within automated building systems. When you have an enterprise or a business that has its own technology system, you can analyze that in the threat vectors that go into it. When it's automated systems that go into, say, a 20-story office building, you'd on average have 10 to 15 separate systems within an office building, all being run independently by particular vendors. And each one of those is potentially liable and potentially hackable. And that could freeze some system in a building, like an HVAC system or smart conference rooms. It could mess up smart scheduling and things like that. There's all different ways that was exploding out. And the insurance industry actually put a pause on insuring for cybersecurity building operating systems until they got it more figured out.
That brings up a really good point, Jason, because of the number of systems and the number of organizations that represent an office building, a typical multi-tenant office building. And property management is such a service-focused industry. Why do managers, owners, and tenants then need to focus on their own protections above all others?
Yeah, I think it's just whoever is going to suffer the damage That's the one that needs to make sure that they have the insurance to cover themselves. So each of the tenants.
But that's
in the
everybody.
buildings- It is. Each of the tenants in the buildings would want to have their own insurance. Each of the vendors that go into the buildings to provide a service, some of the ones that we mentioned, and there's more, security cameras, building Wi-Fi, they would want to have insurance. And then the owners, the owners of the buildings themselves would want to have some level of cyber insurance to cover their liabilities.
Let's discuss the changing paradigm, as I believe you had called it, Tommy, of business relationships and the zero trust environment, which is a point, Wanda, that you brought up in our original conversation. Speak to us about that, please.
So in zero trust, it's hard. And back in the old days, you trusted everyone until you found a reason not to trust them. In today's society, you can't really take that benefit of the doubt. I can't say that the biggest HVAC company or controls company in the world, the lowest common denominator is the technician that comes to your building. The company as a whole may have great policies. If the engineer doesn't know the policies, or the guy that's out on the site and breaks them, you get a TJ Maxx, or you get a or Target incident where, you know, the policies were there, but they weren't followed. And what happened henceforth is a huge hack. So it's so much easier to not trust anybody from the start and make them earn it. And you know, we deal with probably 40 different vendors from an HVAC perspective. And from the best to the worst, there's not that big a gap between where they are in technology. And it is so scary because, yeah, they know how to fix a compressor that's broken on a chill or a air handler or a package unit. But when it comes to securing the network, they have no clue what's going on. So it's just easier to take it amongst yourself and make sure it's done. But the problem is always, then again, how do we make sure we know everything that's going on? And that's where you get into a big trouble, because they'll come and change a board for a PC or for a rooftop unit and not tell anyone, TJ Maxx, and you're in trouble.
Final thought, and I'd like this from each of you. Is bulletproof cybersecurity, does it even exist? Is it a thing? And what are some of the steps that, say specifically property managers, you're smiling, some specific steps that property managers especially can take to get as close to bulletproof as possible?
I mean, the easy answer and clear answer is no. That as we get on top of one aspect of cybersecurity, the community who is trying to penetrate our networks and compromise our systems, they're just one step ahead of us. And so we have to figure out a way to leapfrog that and shut it down. Because if you're just continuously in a reactive mode or just staying one step ahead, then eventually you're going to get caught. And this is why I think that the move to the zero trust environments is really critical for all industries. But it's when you had everything on-prem, then the on-prem was getting hacked. Now things are being moved to the cloud. So the incidents actually have shifted from Windows hacking to Linux-based hacking, because a lot of the cloud environments and the cloud integrations are done in Linux. And so you just keep seeing this leapfrog effect going on. So the sooner we just bite the bullet and lock everything down and start reeling it back out on a need-to-know basis, the better off we're going to be.
The term we go for, John, isn't so much bulletproof, it's resiliency. How fast can you detect a threat, figure out how far it's gone, stop it, and then restore the network with as little lost time and loss to functionality as possible? That's the key term, because the hacker only needs to be right one time, and they can employ so many different threat vectors, and there's so many hackers that are out there that almost make this an industry where they're constantly trolling, looking for little ways in, and all they need is a good way in. And once they're right, they've been right the one time, and then they go. So how fast can you detect it? How fast can you stop it? How fast can you restore? And so we focus on resiliency from that standpoint.
I look at
Yes.
I look at bulletproof as, you may be able to stop one bullet, but you're not gonna stop a million bullets, right? So bulletproof is not really in existence, but what is in existence is preventive maintenance. And I would also add that as the hackers get better, our tools to prevent them get better, and making sure we utilize those tools. For example, I can't tell you how many of my colleagues don't use geo IP caching on their firewalls. So unless you're doing business in Russia or the Ukraine, there's no reason you should IP addresses from there to your network or to your buildings. And when you don't utilize all the tools at your disposal from the beginning, it makes you a lot more vulnerable. And those are the things that people aren't going to ask you for. And truth be told, when you do penetration testing, I haven't met a company yet that's based in Moscow or somewhere like that that's going to try and pen test you. So there's nothing good that comes out of that. So we look at it as we continuously look at for the newest and greatest technology, or utilize the technology we have to its fullest potential.
And that's a terrific way to end. I want to thank you all for your help today with the video. Thank you as well for your assistance when we were creating the deep dive. Thank you again and have a terrific day.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
John.